Hello everybody, Zeidoktor here with Typical Manga Fan, and this episode of the Typical Manga Review is going to be dedicated to Attack on Titan, Chapter 85, titled Basement. And I wonder what it's going to be about.
What would have been a dick move is if they were about to open the basement at the very end of the last page, and then the next chapter is when they actually reveal what's going on. They didn't do that, but imagine if that actually happened. That would be like a biggest fu to everyone, especially since it's a monthly chapter.
Quick little thing here, since you bring that up, there's a podcast I've listened to. I haven't listened to it in a long time lately, but it's called Writing Excuses, and they actually describe that as the wrong way to do a cliffhanger. Like they pretty much, as we'll see here, like what you want to do is like right before you cliffhang, you want to have something that's visible that noticeably changes what you thought you knew or changes the rules in some way, which is what this does. Which is what we get here.
I heard that
rather than just open the door and then cliffhang, open the door, get a glimpse of what's inside, and then cliffhang.
I don't know if you watched The Walking Dead, but I watched it, and I know that a lot of people. So the last season ended on a cliffhanger, and I know a lot of people hated it, and even critics just said, "Look, that's not how you do a cliffhanger. You can't just like say, oh, wait till next season." Like there are certain things I think should they say like should be revealed and shouldn't be postponed simply for the sake of anticipation. I do believe that the basement in the Attack on Titan. Thankfully avoided that situation where they decide to go anticipation rather than look, you got this far, we'll reward you for getting this far, and of course the title is very important. You cannot follow through the if you can't not follow through the title. You have to follow through with the title. So anyway, we see like what he saw right before he got burned, I think, right? Because she see Mikasa saying Armin or something.
Mikasa wasn't there, but yeah, it's like basically
like no.
He wasn't.
Well, what the heck was that?
It was him and Eren that were fighting the first class.
Maybe that does look like looks like Mikasa. Scarf.
Maybe.
What page are you on?
First page. Maybe it's like when the Colossal Titan like actually started attacking or something else.
But look behind her. You see the wind blowing, like the Colossal Titan's just like blowing everything. So, but yeah, you're right. He was with Eren. So I don't know why. I think maybe it's like one of those situations where you don't remember what actually happens to you, but you only remember stuff that happens before that. So of course that's like the closest thing that has happened to him. Before getting like burned. It was the Colossal Titan out.
Yeah, when the Colossal Titan was doing his colony drop.
Yeah, that's probably it. And that's like how much he remembers up to that point. And then so we see him actually in his dreams looking at the Colossal Titan face to face, and you see the Colossal Titan is actually crying. And I'm assuming that this has to do with also how Bertold died, but also I guess what he knows about humanity that I guess we don't know. Because he says, because they talk about saving them or how they have to die, and I guess that could cause a lot of turmoil in someone, even though obviously like Bertold, part of his character development was getting over that, but that doesn't mean that it's not there. So maybe that's part of it.
Maybe.
So we wake up. We go back to the real world with Armin waking up on top of the wall, and you see that he's actually next to Sasha, who's just like saying, it hurts, but she's still alive, which is good. And let's face it, if they're alive at this point, they're gonna pull through.
I don't think
especially with a character like Sasha.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's in a position to like make a comeback attack or something like that anytime soon. So.
There are actually some dick stories that they'll have a character survive a really like ridiculously like
just a
near death experience.
Yeah.
No, like a near death experience, right? And then they'll check the body and they'll be like, oh, okay, she's in a lot of pain or he's in a lot of pain, but he'll live. And the next morning they die.
Yeah.
That happened in one of the stories I read, which was really sad because what happened was they checked her body, like her heart and all that shit. But they forgot to check her head, which is she apparently had a gash wound and it like caused a hemorrhage or something, or she had a trauma on her head, not really a gash but like a trauma.
Yeah.
And so it actually caused a hemorrhage and that killed her. And it's just like, wow, what the frick? You spent like 3 chapters a whole chapter saying she's all right, we're gonna get through this, and then she dies. What the frick? But thankfully that's not gonna happen with Sasha.
Nope. Because her injuries are severe but never life-threatening.
Yeah, and that did not happen with Armin either, and everyone's happy that Armin's back. He doesn't remember anything, and basically, and so, and Levi tells Eren to tell him everything, basically, so we have a big recap.
And he's shooting off a flare while he does, too.
Yeah, I guess that's the one to symbolize that they've basically won.
Yep.
Uh, and so basically, there's only 9 members of the Survey Corps left, which is basically the main cast. How convenient!
Yeah.
And
Mental note: do not include red. Never include red in the uniform, especially on the certs.
So it's been 4 hours since the battle, but there's no one. There's basically no other survivors. They captured Bertle, blah blah blah. He talks about the disagreement about the ejection, and he actually says like, wow, like
rating your kind of a recap here, basically.
Yeah, and he's actually shocked at the fact that they chose him. You know, he says, look, isn't it more practical to bring Erwin back to life? And and he's like, and you know what's interesting is that I said that from a story perspective, it makes sense to give Armin the ejection, right? But I'd like to say that from their perspective, which is not they don't know they're in a story. To them, it's real life.
Yeah.
It would have made more sense to give Erwin the injection, because I talk about all this build for character development and shit, but that doesn't mean squat in real life. Like, it doesn't matter who got the character development. It's who can help us now, because we don't know what's in the future. For us who's in the real world, and this is a manga, we can say, this is probably going to lead to a better solution or a better ending. In their world, they don't know that, so yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense that Armin's just like, what are you doing? Like, Erwin's the better choice. Not that he's ungrateful, but he's just like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And of course, and then they do this.
I was gonna say, Hanji makes to point out that Mikasa and Eren pretty much violated military law by going against Levi.
And even though they said they accept the punishment, which it's like, you can't just break the law knowing that you're gonna get the punishment. It's like it goes against the point of the law. The law is to prevent certain things like this from happening. The punishment is supposed to prevent you from doing it again. If you're gonna do it again, there's no point of the punishment, and that's the point.
Yeah.
Yes, they did basically defy orders. At the end, it was Levi who made the decision, and Levi was the one who's basically given that authority, and he decided to go for Armin in the end. And he actually points it out, saying like, yeah, at the end of the day, I was the one who chose Armin because of personal feelings. And Armin's like, what the frick? I was like, what the frick too. But they
And Naji actually says flat out she thinks it should have gone to Erwin.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because it's the practical decision.
Yeah, because you've just been saying.
Yeah, like, Armin thinks it should have gone to Erwin. In fact, I bet you that if it wasn't for the personal feelings involved, Eren and Mikasa would have said Erwin. Armin is like the hope choice, like put your faith into this guy who he doesn't have much of a reputation, but it's going for it's really illogical. Not only illogical, it's like the faith based. It's faith based, which is not something you should do.
I think we discussed this last time too. It's like Erwin was like the one who's like more focused about dying well, like more bleak in his outlook. Well, like you said, Armin's the hope choice.
Yeah, but also keep in mind that the hope choice is only viable, is only palatable if again, to us who in the audience who is reading this saying like it's a manga, so there are certain things it's probably gonna do. But again, in this world where they could all just die like the next day and nothing could change. They have to make the practical, pragmatic decision.
Yep.
And again, even Armin says it should have been Erwin, but at the end of the day, it happened. So we basically been entrusted with his life and the power of the Titans. And Hanji actually says like, look, we'll be expecting you to contribute more, but actually wait, one sec. Did you say it?
Well, Armin, yeah.
Wait. I want to read to make sure because I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Oh, sorry.
I was okay. She's gonna say something that I was gonna say something else, but so Armin actually is like starting to tremble because it's a big burden. Like Levi's like, you can't replace Erwin. Don't bother. However, you do have the Titan's power, so don't make us regret it. And not no one. So everyone's basically in this situation where like they're in. It's almost like staying at the abyss, but at the same time there's a little tiny tunnel where they're like, okay, we have to do this. It's not going to be easy, but we have no other choice. And so he's like, this is your mission. And then Sasha's like, shut up. Which is like, see, I told you she is like the bright one, right? I mean, like as I said, like you can't kill her because she's the one who brings this type of atmosphere to everyone. Like everyone's bleak.
She's the one who kind of breaks the mood.
Shut the hell up! I'm sleeping here. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not even about whether you like her or you don't like her. Sort of because that tends to happen in stories that kill people off. But it's because she actually serves, I think, a pretty objective role to the series, which is to kind of balance out everything. And it's, if she wasn't the only if she wasn't the only one, then yeah, I could buy her dying soon. But because she's like the only one who does this, it's sort of like, well, we can't use anyone else. And if she dies,
Yeah.
it just won't be as cool.
Yeah, she's the comic relief. Like her job is to, in a way, break the tension where nobody else really can.
Yeah. And yeah, even Hanji actually points this out. And so, okay, there you go. This is what I wanted to talk about with Hanji. So she says, look, I'm basically everyone's successor because I was second command. You know, the chain of command, blah blah blah. And it says, well, you know what? I'm basically in the same position as you. A lot to be expected of me. I have a big shoes to fill. So we'll both have to prepare for whatever comes next. So yeah, basically Hanji's like, yeah, you know, neither of us wanted this to happen, but now that it has, we got to step up.
Yep.
So basically, now everyone's going to survey, and they're basically having a survey the area as well as watch their backs. You know, watch from all four sides. And then he's like, "Oh, Barry Aaron, you haven't lost the key, have you?" And he's like, "Nope."
That would have been terrible.
that'd be the waste of like 5. You know what I see? I see like this is a video game, and then he actually does, and we have to spend like a whole mini game like finding the key. You know, like can you imagine like in the PS2 or PS3 game?
Yeah.
You know, like in one of the old days, they kind of like shoehorn that in, just like damn it.
Oh,
you know?
I know a game that turned a funeral into a series of mini games.
Yeah.
Lost Odyssey. It was either end of the first disc or start of the second one. The funeral for the main character's daughter and the mother of 2 other characters, a mini game while you light the torches and all sorts of stuff.
Was it fun at least, or was it like
No.
a nuisance? That was a nuisance.
Yes. It completely just like, oh come on, really?
I know Ocarina of Time made all the side quests kind of like fun to do, but
Yeah. And then they can be. I mean, there's other side quests in that game that are like extra dungeons and things like that. But it's
well,
like,
I mean, but to be fair, though, Legend of Zelda is known for making side quests really fun. So
Yeah.
I mean, can't really compare to that because it's such a big game,
Yeah.
type of title.
Lost Odyssey was like one of the first RPGs for the Xbox 360. So
Yeah. So basically, they actually arrived at the area of their old home, and they're actually they're happy. They're thankful that the fire didn't spread that far, because you know that would have been a bad thing.
yeah,
And very inconvenient.
yeah, we got
but
like a nice
they
little double shot here, like Mikasa and Aaron as kids running to it, and then them as adults.
Yeah, I can actually see how this would be in the anime. The anime they will show with the first, like the kids first, and it will like fade into the adults thing. I can see that.
Yeah,
So, but yeah, it's basically the same, except now there's stuff going over it. It actually is pretty well hidden because of the gigantic boulder.
I would say that actually makes it pretty
And
obvious.
I think they actually see. Well, I mean, there's boulders everywhere. I mean, the problem is that boulders everywhere. So the house itself is kind of like in rubble, so you can't say that's the house. You know, it actually does depend on how much boulder is, or how much rubble is around everywhere else, though. I'm sure there's a lot though, because I mean the Titans destroyed the place.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, if you look around, you'll see that the buildings on the right are actually like they were actually somehow survived all that. I don't know how, but they're actually still standing.
Yeah, you know, you do see like a whole bunch of places like smoking, burning, and full of holes a few pages back.
Yeah.
Now
So
at this point though, we're getting treated to a bunch of flashbacks.
yeah,
to
somehow the
their
buildings on the right
childhood.
survived.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the buildings on the right are still alive there, but in the present day though, that sounds weird to say that, but in the present day we go to a flashback.
We have to see the shoe. I think the shoe actually triggers it's part of what triggers a flashback, which I think their mom's shoe, right?
I was gonna say either that or I was gonna say Mikasa because they had her running around and such, but yeah, probably the mother's shoe.
Yeah. So they remember about the basement, and how the father's saying, I don't know what to show you the basement. It's basically them talking about the basement, and he says, maybe when you realize the most important thing of all, that's when I'll show you the basement. And they actually find the basement door, and so they're like, didn't flood. Great. A lot of these things I could see being really hell inconvenient. Flooding, not being able to find the place, losing the key. This is a mini game for everyone here. Then she's like, okay, let's go. And they basically talk about how, like, Aaron wanted to go outside the walls because he didn't want to he wanted to know what's out there, basically. And this actually kind of, I think, inspired the dad to sort of like, okay, now I know that you're almost ready, or you are ready. And Carl is trying to like say, look, you don't make him say this, stop him, because the government, all that stuff. Yeah. And he talked about how the human spirit of inquiry isn't something that can be contained with words. And he says, I'll show you the basement that I've hid from you all this time. So this is happening concurrently with them going down the basement.
Yeah.
And so Aaron's like, okay, moment of truth. and he tries to open it,
and the key does not fit.
Oh shit! And he's like, well, like just break it down, which is actually the keys are not actually that important. It's just symbolic, but in reality, you're gonna break them down the door anytime.
Like Levi just unless like, yeah, this.
Unless the door was made out of Titan like armor and shit, because who knows, right? But it wasn't, thankfully, and he actually opens the door up, and then they look inside, and it's just like a normal lab. Actually, a really small lab with almost like cobwebs everywhere. It's been a long time since anyone's been here, but it's actually been, because in the basement it's actually otherwise in neat condition. And they're like, oh well, obviously there's nothing visible, because if the military police came in, they shouldn't be able to find anything. You have to hide stuff, and so they actually look around. And then Mikasa actually finds a drawer and says like, "Hey, look, there's a keyhole here. Maybe you want to put it in there." And he actually does, and that's where. And it turns out that the key that Eren had from his dad opens this drawer.
So this is initially empty.
Yeah, well, but unless you watch Death Note, you know that there's something underneath. Also, you have to make sure that.
Fortunately, Grissa Yeager did not watch Death Note, because there's no trap underneath the false.
Yeah, I was mentioning the trap, because you need to use the pencil, it wasn't pencil. It was like a little tiny like. No. What do you use? Like a little
ballpoint pen or something, like the little ink thing from.
Yeah, ballpoint pen. There you go. Oh, he took it out. He took it out of the ballpoint pen or something.
It's some funny thoughts that occurred to me. We can remember that with so much detail, but what can you tell me about the businessman with Death Note arc?
The what?
Exactly. That little buried.
You mean the third Kira?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
or Yotsuba, if you want to go by that. I don't know.
Yotsuba, yeah. Well, I mean, I've watched Death Note multiple times, so okay. I might not. But I think the problem is, he went through such detail talking about it, and so that's why we kind of remember
thing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like holy shit, you would go so far to do this, and even talk about how it would explode, like holy crap, man. It's just a freaking. It's like I get that it's a big deal, but it's like holy, like did he do this after the Death Note, or did he always have this in mind?
No kidding. Anyway, getting back to the topic here. Underneath the false bottom are at least 3 books. There might be more, but there's at least 3 at first glance. They notice there's like an odd smell to them, like a peppermint oil and charcoal.
Yeah.
They've been treated, I guess, to keep them in good condition.
And
it is 3 books. It is 3 books. Hanji says 3 books.
Yeah. So it goes back to when Erwin it goes back to the military police captain or leader talking with the other big this is why the Erwin flashback comes, because obviously who would remember this if not Erwin? He's dead.
Yeah.
But so it just goes back to the guy remembering Erwin, talking with the other military leaders about how like Erwin's questioning the fact that why are we assuming that humans are dead? Couldn't they be out there? And they talk about how all the history says everyone else in the world is thought to have been dead, blah blah blah, and basically saying no, this is actually something that might. Erwin was actually saying what if this was actually something that the government is using to, support their claim to the throne, and their power.
Yeah, basically the way Erwin puts it is like the books say all of humanity was eaten, but if you wanted to actually be objective about it, the right thing to say would have been humanity was thought to have been eaten.
Yeah, thought to be because it's true. They actually don't know, and of course we obviously seen proof that that's not actually the case. But so basically they're talking about it's kind of sad because they're saying then apologize to him directly because you doubted him, blah blah blah. But we all know now that Erwin is dead. And actually, this is when they get the announcement that the Survey Corps has returned, and that Wall Maria has been retaken, so everyone's really happy. But of course, the Survey Corps themselves we actually see only the back of their face, of their heads, because I'm sure they're like very in deep contemplation and shocked about what they figured out. And now we actually see what they found out, and it was actually what looks like a portrait, but actually it's not. It is
they know
a photograph.
Yeah, they know it's way too elaborate for a human to have drawn it.
Yeah, so they don't even know what photographs are.
Which I'll be getting into in just a moment here.
And so a message was actually written, and it says, this is not an illustration. This is an imprint of the subjects reflected. They basically talk about what is known as a photograph, but reflected light onto a special kind of paper. It is known as a photograph. I came from beyond the walls, where humanity enjoys a refined existence. Humanity has not perished. The story of the truth is told. That's on the bottom.
Yep. And in that
that's the big.
Real quick, in that photo, is that Grissa on the side standing up?
Probably.
Okay.
I mean, it's a younger. It looks like a
Yeah.
younger version, but I mean, it could be anyone. I mean, we all know that in anime and manga, people who look similar probably are not, and sometimes
Yeah.
they who don't look. It's crazy.
Yeah, but at the same
It can
time,
be the other way around.
his art style does have some issues. We've noted in the
Yeah,
past.
we pointed that out. That people we do have issues confusing with people with others, but here's so okay. So this is the big secret, right? This is
Yep.
the big. You know what's interesting is that okay. First off, who thought of the village when they saw this? When you saw this?
I didn't because I never saw that movie.
Okay, well this is basically spoiler alert. This is the plot
I mean-
twist of the movie.
I know the twist, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, I mean, so you know what's interesting is that last week or last time I was going to talk about the Berlin Wall
Yeah.
and how and the reason why I talked about it is because as y'all know, and especially since this week, North Korea's been in the news a lot lately, right? Because of their missiles and their nuclear tests. And so I actually was researching about them, and because I researched them, I kind of learned about how they handle themselves and also the relationships to the Berlin Wall. And so when I was reading Attack on Titan, I was thinking to myself like, wow, this wall really reminds me of. And the fact that it takes place in Germany, and as well as the fact that the wall keeps people from but they say, oh, it keeps us, it protects us. It's like, oh my god, I think it's an intentional reference to the Berlin Wall and how they use that to obstruct information as well as support the totalitarian government's regime. And of course, North Korea is the only current state that is kind of like that right now. And so that's why I was kind of thinking that, and I forgot to. I was going to mention that last time, but I actually forgot to. I think it actually is relevant now though, because now we have this reveal that there are actually other people outside. This was actually something I did consider. I mean, we all talked about this, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and I'm sure we've come up with at least some theory about that before.
yeah, I mean, it could have been anything I said. Like, it's not like a human being was down. A lot of people are like, oh, is it like no? It had to survive all this time. There's no way. But yeah. So
I actually saw one thing I don't think we ever talked about before. Like I saw a couple of spots when I looked at the discussion just briefly here and there. Is like the idea of a fourth wall that's far enough back that nobody's seen it.
okay.
Like maybe like there's actually like the Titans are in this fourth wall, or the Zeke's people are in there, but then there's even more beyond that.
That's the village.
Yeah.
That's basically the village. Like, I mean, well, in the village they didn't. They had like they had people dressed up as like monsters to keep them inside. They didn't have a literal wall they didn't have an inner wall, but they did have an outer wall. And if you got past that wall, you literally go into like the modern century. And so that's what the wall was. And they would pay off people, like they would pay planes not to go anywhere close. That way they wouldn't see that and all that stuff. And it's a huge area, right?
Yeah.
So what interests me is that they actually point out that they're not only people outside of the wall, which I definitely would believe, but and we also know because of Titan shifters, but they lived in refined existence, and in some translations like they live in luxury. You can see that they live pretty happily, and they have photographs.
Yeah, that's the one thing I really like about this reveal, to be honest with you.
Well, first off, I didn't know that they didn't know what photographs were in this.
But at the same time, I didn't think much about it one way or the other, but that's kind of why I like it, because you have these people that are able to figure out the details of this whole sci-fi concept of giant mind-eating monsters and actually work around and fight and do that, but they have no concept of photography. I love that weird little anachronistic mix. I love that.
Well, yeah, but also, I mean, if you think about it, it makes sense why they don't.
Yeah.
Photography is a great way of keeping track of history, right? And what do they want to control? History.
Yeah, something they don't want to do.
Yeah, exactly. And what did they do? And they focus all their efforts on the military stuff because that's what they thought were needed. It sounds a lot like North Korea because they focus all their technology onto the missiles, but they don't really do so much on everything else. I mean, they don't even know how modern cameras work. North Koreans don't know that. They think that apparently if it's not red, then it's not recording. But it's like no, that's how a lot of people screw them over. And yeah, of course they made people think that. And there's also this idea that we are happy with where we are right now. There's no need to go outside. That's also how the Berlin Wall and the North Koreans believe. Like they believe that they're safe where they are. That where they live is basically the best place they can be, and they need protection from the outside, which is trying to destroy everything from within. But in reality, as we all know, we're actually trying to help everyone, right? So my guess is, whatever this totalitarian government was trying to keep them away. I don't know. But the big question I have though is, unlike us, who are obviously trying to who did break down the Berlin Wall, but also trying to free the North Koreans. The Titan shifters, who are the only people who are from other places, have been trying to kill everyone, which is a little different. And we've already kind of broken down the totalitarian government. We have the first king,
right.
well, the Rice family has basically been overthrown with not technically, because Historia is but she's actually only just a figurehead, so it's technically overthrown. Oh, not officially.
Figurehead might be wrong. Well, I guess figurehead's the right word actually, but the corrupt side of the Rice family is done.
Well, I mean, because she's only essentially put the power of the Rice is gone. The power of the
there you go.
She right now, and they all know that too. They even say that. Like, they all know she's just a figurehead, but they're okay with that. She is now. So the military has taken control. So we feel like we got that resolved, and it seems to be a lot more progressive in terms of where they're going. Like they're okay with spreading information about what happened with the king. Mm-hmm. I don't know how they're going to handle this information, though. I don't know if the survey codes going to keep this themselves, or they're going to say only, to the military leaders, or what. But this can mean a lot of things. But also, I guess one thing is I also had another question, which is, why aren't these people trying to help the people inside? Like, is that why they don't? Because the Titans are actually keeping them away? Because if you think about it, if these people outside the wall have to know that there is a wall, because obviously this is a huge area that is locked away from the rest of the world. It's kind of noticeable saying, here's that wall that we can't go into.
I can think of a few possibilities here. One, they may not realize there are humans in there. Like, maybe Grisha's kind of unique in this case, or the other Titan shifters are unique in this case. Like, they can see that they may know about the Titans, but think that the wall keeps them penned up. Like, kind of the opposite of,
yeah.
Actually,
I see. You're saying that they think that the wall is actually made to keep the Titans in, but they don't think there's anyone inside. But there are, and of course they're so far away that they don't actually know the existence of each other. That's actually an interesting theory of aliens, actually, where they say, like, even if there were a billion planets with aliens in the world, in the universe, there's so many planets out there that we'd be so far apart, just like mathematically, we'd be so far apart that we basically were never able to make contact with each other.
The question though is, what's the deal with the Titan shifters in this case? Like, why do they seem interested in killing the people behind the walls?
Yeah, well, I'm assuming the Time shifters are with these people because they know who Grisha is, right? And Grisha says he comes from this. So if you can deduce that, then the Titan shifters are from something like this, where they maybe they're. Yeah. But quickly, it's interesting. They said they came from a village. They said that, right? And maybe a translation.
Are they some kind of weird, like, in between area, maybe?
Yeah, because they said refined existence enjoys. So basically, they're rich.
At the same time, Zeke is referred to as a war chief.
Yeah.
Not exactly a refined title.
Well, I mean, maybe it's like
I say that as a Warcraft fan, so I associate war chief with the Horde.
Well, maybe it's sort of like how like capitalism is related to like the outside world in real life. Yeah. Maybe like obviously there are a lot of people obviously the people in these East Germany, East Berlin, and North Korea, they all live in pretty poor lives, with the exception of a few very rich people. But with capitalism, you have a great generally the country is healthier. I mean, but there's still a lot of people in the middle class and of course in the lower class. But it's still much better than the communist areas. So maybe it's like that, where it's a lot better than we have here, but there are still people who are not exactly the richest of the rich, and maybe we're seeing that these Grisha or Zeke or whatever is somewhere in between, or they're like the warriors of these people, so they obviously are treated a little differently. I mean, the problem is we don't know much about the societies outside. It could be anything,
Hopefully next chapter will confirm that a little bit. But here's one thing I've kind of thought about here. Telling the leadership is one thing. I think I'm fairly assuming that they're going to have to do that, just because that's why they went out in the first place. But will they make these findings public?
I think I asked that question.
When you were saying, I was understanding it in terms of would they tell the leadership?
I was saying. Well, the reason why is because I said so far the leadership has been transparent, but will that change in this situation? That's what I said.
Yeah.
Because it could cause mass panic. It could cause people to. Here's the thing, though. If they obviously just figured this out themselves, right?
Yeah.
So they wouldn't really lose the trust of the people, because the government that's been doing this has been overthrown. It's the new government's been there for 2 weeks?
Ooh, that's a question right there as well. As corrupt as the Rice government and everything was, were they complicit in this? Like, were they? I mean, obviously they seem to be aware of everything, but how complicit in what we're about to discover were they?
Well, remember what happened with Freda? What the hell was her name again? What it starts with an F. The daughter of the king, right? Or king.
I know who you mean. I don't remember the name offhand. I want to say Francesca.
Okay, so Historia's sister,
Frida.
Frida. There you go. Yeah. Okay, Frida. So Frida remember she went crazy when saying, you humans need to be kept in this pen. So maybe I think maybe is that these humans are the descendants of criminals who have committed atrocities in the other outer societies, and the King Rice is like the warden,
like the ultimate exiles kind of thing.
Yeah, and then I guess it wasn't Australia kind of like that, like the original.
Yeah, like it was originally a penal colony.
Yeah.
As I know it. Beyond that, I couldn't tell you the history.
So maybe it's something like this, where obviously the descendants are innocent of whatever, but the ancestors were guilty of horrible crimes, and this is why they were exiled into this area to keep away from the societies that are living in peace.
Yeah, but it still doesn't explain why the Titans suddenly want to kill everybody. Because they had this whole 100 years of nothing going on, then suddenly, boom, colossal Titan.
Well, keep in mind that it seems to me that well, first off, I think they've always felt that way about. Okay, why they want to do it now of all times is a question that hasn't been answered.
Right.
But in terms of why they feel the way they do towards the humans, I think that's always been that way. I think maybe they believe like something like the sins of the father, where if your grandfather commits something, then you are you not as guilty, but still holds some of the sin. Or maybe just as much as sin. I don't know. Like I'm not religious, so I don't know how much of the sins of the father thing, kind of sin of Adam or whatever, bears in mind. But maybe they believe that because the ancestors committed such atrocities, that the children still hold that guilt. Because again, well, not communist, but I know in North Korea, they believe that if one person commits a crime, that the grandfather and the grandson, or the two consecutive generations, or like either before or after, are also guilty. Yeah. So it's a family. I think it's called family punishment or whatever. So maybe it's the same thing. Maybe it's like, if you committed it, then your grandfather and your grandson technically committed it too, or like or some type of ideology they don't want passed. But I mean, it could be a lot of things. At the end of the day, we are given a big truth, but we still have a lot of questions that need to be answered.
Yeah. I guess. That's the one that kind of impresses me. Like, what changed in the status quo to create the situation we have now? That is for me like the big question here.
The author deciding that he probably shouldn't procrastinate anymore.
Well, no, but not intentionally. I mean in the plot sense. Like, what brought the colossal Titan to us?
I'm joking. Yeah. I'm joking. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Also, little off topic if you don't mind. You want to know when we were talking about like the purpose of the walls? Do you want to know? I thought of something that you're not going to know about. It's from the game Earthbound.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah. Near the end of the game, like next to the last big area or so, there's a sort of like underground land with dinosaurs and such in it. And there's like these little penned up areas, like where you meet people, where you can do things like save game, buy items, etc. But the thing is, like, to these people, everything else is inside the cage. They're the ones that are fine. Like, they're in these like little penned up areas, and they're talking about like how they've locked all the dinosaurs and monsters into a cage. It's kind of like a little bit of backwards thinking there, but that's what it made me think of.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So who knows about why they are? Yeah. I don't know if I'm using the right word for consecutive. Whatever. So yeah. I mean, it could be a lot of things as to why the world the way it is in this. Yeah. All I say is sucks to be Germany in this case. I wonder how America's doing.
Hang on, random thing. Okay, I'm gonna acknowledge I'm way late to the party on this, but is that you think that's why the author used a German culture in the first place?
Probably. Yeah. That's what I said. It's probably an intentional reference. Yeah, the Berlin Wall is a perfect example of what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean that you're mentioning that's kind of what made me realize that, because I never really gave it much thought one way or the other.
And keep in mind that the Berlin Wall separated Berlin, but Berlin itself was in the middle of East Germany, so there was an even bigger like gap between them and the rest of the world. So which I thought was always weird.
Yeah.
Because you know in history they always talk about how East Berlin was isolated, but if you think about it, isn't West Berlin isolated? Because they were, because apparently the only way to get to them was like by air or by certain like a railway or something.
Yeah.
But they were happier because they were being controlled, because they were getting help from the West or the other parts of the West. But yeah. Back to it's just like. Okay, I know. I wanted to use the word immediate, like immediate generations in terms of guilt. Like, because in North Koreans would, if a member would commit a crime, a political crime, then the two generations that are immediate to him get punished as well. That's what I want to say. Although I think consecutive can work too, but I think
consecutive. I think consecutive might be the better word in that case.
Well, immediate.
Or unless you mean both directions.
In both directions, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, consecutive may work, but I think immediate's better actually. But because it's usually the grandparents and then the sons and daughters that get screwed over, as well as the person, and wife too, or husband, significant other, basically. But yeah, so Erwin's dead. Armin's kind of like has a lot of things to do, like a big burden to handle.
He's got a lot to process.
As well as Hanji, but Hanji has a lot more experience because she's like groomed. I think she's as second command. She's basically in that position where she has at least some type of training to lead. Armin's just like, yeah, he's only done it at very sporadic occasions. So now he's actually someone to depend on consistently. Because remember that at the beginning of this fight, Erwin had to, John had to kind of like get things going before Armin kind of pulled it together. Armin can't go through that now. He has to get to his brain immediately. He has to get to all of his plans, get everything moving immediately, because we cannot waste a second. And Erwin was good at that, but I think Armin has to, whether he's ready or not, has to do it.
Because during this whole thing, like, he was good at strategy, but when in the midst of the action, he was kind of choking a bit. Like, John had.
Well, yeah, because it's different when planning everything ahead versus actually being in the midst of fire, in the line of fire, and having to come up with something on the fly. That's hard.
He's also got Titan power to work out the mastery of too.
Yeah, I'm assuming that they're not gonna make him use it too much, because obviously I don't think he can communicate well at all. Maybe and we talked about this already, but how can he communicate? Is he how much of his brain can he use? Can he remember all his plans? How much can he think while in this Titan mode?
That's exactly why they would have him try and use it. Hanji's a scientist. He's going to want to experiment.
Use it in practice. Okay, that's fine. Whatever. I'm talking about use it in actual fights, which is something that you want to avoid.
That'll probably depend on where the practice goes.
Well, I mean, they already have. If they have Armin be in the line of fire, because if you're a Titan, you could basically be in the front lines, right?
Yeah. I mean, but still, that's not an impossibility. I mean, he does. If he does maintain the power of the Colossal Titan, he's going to be like the single biggest massive brute force they have.
That doesn't matter though. He's also his intelligence is a lot more important than if he. Because we don't.
That might depend on the situation.
No, it's not. Trust me, it's bad tactics to have your tactician be on the front lines. That's flat out tactics 101. You don't want that. Yeah. That's why you have generals, in war, not be in the front lines, but in the back. Not because they're cowards, but because you need the guy leading you to not have the head cut off. Basically, you don't want your leader to be decapitated. And so it seems like Hanji and Armin will have to work together to basically fill in Erwin's shoes. It makes absolutely no sense for them to have Armin become a Titan unless it's like they have to, unless it's like a last resort.
Yeah, but at the same time, a lot of that will depend on just what he does, what he's capable of when he's practicing.
Well, what I'm saying is, if you ever have a situation where Armin's going Titan mode, it's because they have no choice. If they can help it, don't do it. This is not something that's subjective on my end. This is objective thinking. This is tactics 101. This is simple basics on how to handle warfare. You don't have your thinkers, the people who you depend on for plans, be in the line of fire, because if they die, you're screwed. They are not expendable. Soldiers are, unfortunately, but the thinkers.
That's what makes this a tricky one, because if he's like the power of the Colossal Titan, he is their single biggest mass of muscle. I mean, he can be,
but they don't have to use them though. They've been through so many.
At least they'll have that as an option. And that would be bad tactics not to at least consider that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not that I'm not going to say don't ever do it. I said it's do it when you have to. But if you can help it, use Eren because they've been through all these situations without the Closet Titan. You don't want to also over depend on something like the Closet Titan too, because they're like large walking things that can't move. I mean, keep in mind that Bertolt was used to that power, but he obviously couldn't handle it. Remember, and he was defeated. So the Armin Titan thing will probably come up a lot more less common than Eren's Titan, and will probably be like a hyped up last resort situation once or twice. But
maybe. I think you're probably right about that, actually.
Yeah, well, yeah, because first off, you don't want to have something like the Closet Titan be used over and over again. That's just bad. That's bad tactics, and that's bad storytelling.
Yeah.
That's just because you can just bulldoze over everyone. But unless there's another Closet Titan, in which case, yeah. But no, in normally speaking, in terms of making the plans, they're gonna have to for plan A's and plan B's basically. They're gonna have to avoid using Armin's Titan mode, because if they use his Titan mode, that puts him at the risk of being in danger. Because not to mention that the Titan powers, they actually attract Titans. So you're not only are you an easier target, but you're in even more danger because there's other Titans going after you. So
I mean, in like a Mass of Titans, that could be a problem, and I do remember that came up when they were kidnapping Eren before.
Yeah. So no, like it makes no sense for them to try to use Armin too much. If they ever use him, it's going to be for his brains, and they're going to keep him safe. Only at the worst moments, if they have no choice, will Armin go Titan. Otherwise, there's no reason to do it. It would make no tactical sense. Again, as I said, you want your smart guys, your leaders, your planners to be away from enemy lines as far as possible, but close enough to communicate with the soldiers. Eren is not much of a thinker. He's actually just the brute force guy. That's why they let him do that.
Yeah.
But Armin is a completely different situation. Him and Erwin Erwin was a lot more like Erwin actually keep in mind that Erwin was also in the back lines too a lot of times. Only in this time was he ever actually in the front.
Yeah, true. You got a point there. Right?
Yeah. Because if he died, they'd be screwed. And so yeah, Armin he has a duty to stay alive as long as possible because he is the one who can make the most damage. He is the one who can make the most difference with his brain, because again, tactics is key, especially in a war basically. But so you don't want your guy who has that much power, and I'm not saying power in terms of brute force, but power in terms of making a difference,
right,
to be in the line of fire and could easily be captured,
to be an unnecessary danger at least.
An unnecessary. Yeah, well, in the line of fire, you don't want that. If it happens, it happens because it's war. But if you want to avoid him getting captured, you want to avoid him getting hurt. You want him as healthy and as quick thinking as possible, and away from enemy lines if possible. So that way, if anything goes wrong, he can come up with another plan to do something. Because if he goes down first, yeah, they are screwed.
You know, changing topics a bit here. I just had a thought. I think I just realized what changed the status quo. Grisha. Like, the reason like the Titan Shifters are after them and at this point in time is because Grisha defected or he went over there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that would probably be the simplest explanation on there. Like, Grisha left whatever he did. Like, maybe they didn't realize for a while that he'd gone that far, but then once he did, like,
keep in mind Ymir was around for like 70 years.
Right, but she was a mindless Titan until they came along.
No, but why? But was she? Well, actually, never mind. I was thinking myself like, she had met. She knew who they were though after she became human again, right? So that means she was somehow. So for whatever reason, she became Titan. Like, it seemed to me that she was human before. So what made her turn into a Titan after? That made her go. Like, was it? Maybe it's the same reason why everyone else is the Titan in the world. I don't know.
And it might explain why they took so long to act on Grisha, because like, at the very least, the Closet Titan didn't attack until like Eren was like 9 or 10 or something like that.
But he also used the opportunity to attack the Rice family, which is what they had wanted in the first place anyway.
Well, that's what Grisha did.
Well, Grisha did, but we know that the other shifters wanted the coordinate.
True.
Well, actually, maybe. Oh no.
Maybe Grisha was meant to be part of that plan, and he changed his allegiance.
Well, we talked about that, but
at least they thought
the one thing I was thinking of was maybe they actually wanted the king to keep the power, and that Christian stole it, and that's why they want it back. But I realized that no, that's not the case, because that's the other why it was their attack that led that situation in the first place. So that's not the case.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Is maybe like they thought Grissom was doing one thing when whatever else he was
Yeah,
actually
but
doing.
I feel that breaking down the wall is just.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like, if they kept quiet for that long, I don't know. I like that's with too much
Yeah.
conjecture at that point.
Yeah, I would say the simplest thing would just be like maybe they just thought Grissom betrayed them. That would be the simplest explanation, and then maybe from there they kind of worked up the coordinate.
Anyway, so in terms of Armin's powers, we don't expect to see the Cloud Titan too much. They're gonna keep him away from the. They're gonna keep him away from the line of fire. At least try to. Keep in mind that remember that the reason why he was also part of he was a lot of part of the force was because at that point they had Erwin, so they didn't really need him that much. Now that he is. Keep in mind that he was good before.
Yep.
Now with Erwin gone, he is super duper important. You don't want your guy to be in any danger of harm, right? Like you don't want that guy to be in harm's way. There we go. That's what
he may still have to be there in person, like Hanji and Erwin.
Yeah. Let's not get into semantics. Like, you know what I mean? Like you don't want him to be a Titan, turn to a Titan, and be like, okay, Armin, let's go for it. Run at the enemy. No, they're gonna have Eren do stuff, but Armin's gonna be behind the lines, somewhere in like a secret base, or maybe just right in hiding, but close enough to communicate with everyone, saying this is do this, do that, and only when maybe when the lines have been broken, when everyone's almost defeated, Armin's like, okay, I got no choice, Titan mode, because otherwise, you don't know how well he can think. Again, a lot of the stuff can be done through Hanji saying, okay, how well can you think? But he probably can't communicate. He probably can't communicate very well, and that's a problem. So it's a trade-off. If he goes time mode, then basically they kind of have to go on a pre-existing plan, or they have to make up the plan themselves. That's why I said you don't want Armin to go time mode because you don't.
And also, like you said, Eren is the muscle in that case.
Yeah. You already have muscle. Why don't? First off, Armin's not even as good as Eren at that. So why not? Why not just use Eren? But then you give a trade-off, which is basically you lose all of Armin's tactical awareness and mind, his tactical mind. In which case, they're screwed because everyone's. I mean, obviously all the soldiers are intelligent, but Armin is the one who actually comes up with a plan of what to do.
He's like the smartest one, yeah.
Yeah, even John said, look, I can do certain things, but not that, And again, that's what I'm saying. Armin is now essentially the king, right? In the chess piece, he is the king. His survival is what basically allows you to win the game. If he dies, you automatically lose. That's basically what it comes down to. It was Erwin, but thankfully they had a backup king, which was Armin.
And to an extent, Hanji.
Yeah, and Hanji is I think like the dual king. Although I feel maybe Hanji is like the queen. Oh no, actually that's Levi. Levi's the queen.
Yeah, because he can attack from anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, Hanji and Armin are basically gonna work together. They can both be the king. I feel like Hanji is gonna be a little more assertive because of she's not as tactical, but also has some skills that might be needed in the front lines or mid or in somewhere around there. Armin is not as skilled in the front lines, so there's also no point in using him above anyone else.
Yeah.
So again, it makes no sense to even think about him as a tactical weapon, as a weapon or a Titan. Use him as a Titan unless it's a last resort. All of the plans are going to focus mostly on again Armin staying safe, telling everyone what to do, and having Eren be the bulldozer, while everyone else is going to do their own roles.
Most likely, like I said, I could see some possibilities where if he's the Colossal Titan, that would be the better choice. But at the same time, I think you're right that overall they'll probably keep him out of the immediate fights.
Well, the situations where you think he's the Colossal Titan are special situations. I'm not in war. Everything you can't plan everything, right?
Right.
But I'm just saying that in terms of what the smart choice going ahead and what they're planning for what they should plan for, they should plan for Armin not doing anything, too much in terms of the battle, but in terms of the front lines. If he has to turn into Colossal Titan, it's because they have to, not because they want to. That's the difference in those situations. And that's not a subjective. This is not me saying I think. This is Tactics 101. If you ask any general, if you ask any commander, they'll say the same thing. This is if we're going to be using real life tactics, this is how they do it.
Yep.
At the basics. I mean, obviously tactics get more complex, but this is basically it. You don't want the guy who can think of all your plans to be in any danger, because if he dies, you lose. You know, if Eren dies, then they okay. Like if Eren dies, they lose their time power. Okay, that sucks. But they can always plan for something else with Eren. Keep in mind that Erwin, without Titans, was able to handle himself for a long time. That just shows you how much more important Brain is than Brawn. Brawn is helpful, but ultimately Brain is the real key. The real key.
Yeah, I mean, and that is like their biggest weapon against the Titans, at least against the general Titans, and it's what makes the Titan shifters a whole lot more dangerous.
Yeah. Keep in mind that also that that remember even in battle, who in Zeke was the thinker, right? Who was behind the lines most? It was Zeke, right? Because he had the Arnold and Clawstein be the attacking guys, but he was behind the wall just throwing shit.
Yeah. And he was behind the wall of regular Titans too.
Yeah, so he was actually protecting himself. So again, see, you can see that the tactics are being used. You want to keep your best thinker outside of enemy fire, because it's just logical. It's common sense. You don't have the smartest guy, the difference maker, the playmaker, be in any more danger than your other guys, your brawn. You know, keep your brain, your chest warm. Your arms can take care of themselves. I kind of paraphrased Batman there, but whatever.
Alright. Well, we definitely got a lot going on this chapter. Was there anything else you wanted to get into, or anything else that comes to mind?
Well, I'll just say this. So, for anyone listening, this will be my last Attack on Titan review. I am essentially, I'm basically moving on with my life. I have studies to do, going to law school. So I basically, I honestly, unfortunately, don't have much more time for reviews. This is a good 3 years or so.
I think I thought it was just like 1 year, maybe 2.
It has to be at least 2. Yeah. There's no way it's less than 2. But it's been a great ride. But after the Inside Mario review, I will only do the Coming or Kill review after it ends, which will maybe be until I think January at the latest. And after that, it's basically I'm done. So yep. So for the last time on Attack on Titan, this is Typical Manga Fan.
And Zeidoktor.
Bye.